Merge Families, this is Miss Kunas. I'm just here to talk about spelling. So if you already have a spelling system down right now with our spell to write and read, you don't need to watch this video, but if you're struggling and you're hitting a wall, this video is for you, just to hopefully get you started so that you can have more success at home with your child, and so it's not so confusing because there's a lot of information here. So starting off, I just want to talk about the materials you should have. So you should have the 70 basic phonograms, and those should be separated into single letter phonograms and multi-letter, because you're going to start with the single letter phonograms. The exception is QU is in here because Q never makes a sound without the U. So QU is in here, but the rest of them should be single letter. After that, you have the 70 basic phonogram sounds. This CD helps you if you're confused or if you're not certain on the sounds that can come from an A. The CD will have them played out so you can learn them and master them before you start talking to your kids with them. And even if you want to go through with your kids, it's up to you. After that, we come to the spell to write and read. This one's full of information, and a lot of it's geared towards parents, not towards instruction. So it can get a bit frustrating. So I'm going to really talk to you in this video about what's important in here, what you need to use in here, and the rest of it you can let me worry about in class. After that, we come to the WISE Guide. The WISE Guide has the spelling lists, and the spelling lists have a wide range for a wide ability of abilities, for a ton of abilities for wherever your child's at. After that, we have the primary learning log. So as they're learning the spelling words, they'll be writing them in here. And in the back of the primary learning log, they have the spelling rules. And we'll be going over those in class. Let me get to it. The spelling rules, we'll be going over those in class. If you go through them at home, that's totally fine, but we'll definitely retouch them up in class, make sure that they get these covered before the end of the year. After that, we have the spelling rule cards. These rule cards will be covered as you go through the WISE Guide. So if you have a child who is reading and is ready to just start with the spelling, I'm going to talk about 6 steps to get them into this program. And starting with step 1 is the pre-assessment. The pre-assessment is in spell to write and read on page 196. You could either copy this and have them write their assessment on this page, or you could just use lined paper. It's up to you. But the actual words start on page 199, and there's multiple lists you can choose from. So that's step 1. Step 2, once you've given that assessment, is to gauge where your child should be in the WISE Guide. So that should be on page 198 from the spell to write and read. And on page 198, it tells you here, based on how many words they got correct, where they should be in the WISE Guide. So WISE Guide has sections at the top that show you P, A, J, that tell you what section you're in. And so let's say your child got 2 words right. You don't need to focus on this grade part. It's not super important because we're going at your child's pace, but then it tells you to start in section A. So if it tells you to start in section A, start at the very beginning of section A. You can read this on your own before you start with your child, but then you're going to start at the very beginning with the words. And before you start these words, you need to finish the following steps, but it's just to let you know, based off of the test results, what section you should be starting with your child. So if you're starting somewhere else, maybe you got 25 right, you're starting in section P. Just find section P in the book and know that you're starting at the very beginning of section P. For step 3, what you need to do is, after you've taken the assessment, after you know where they place in the WISE Guide, you need to really focus on these basic phonogram cards, specifically A through Z. So A through Z, again, if you need, you could use a CD to help you figure out what those sounds are, but A through Z you need to go through with your children and just make sure that they really master those sounds. It could take as long as you need. It's a lot of new material for a lot of us. It's a very thorough program, but what you need to do is make sure that they have a decent grasp on this before you start with the WISE Guide. If they're getting bored with this, you can go ahead and start, but I think the more your child has a grasp on these basic A through Z sounds, the better success they're going to have in this program, because this when you get into here, you really do need to have a basic foundation of those A through Z cards. So that's step 3. Step 4, you need to have introduction to the multi-letter phonograms. So these, after you have a grasp on these, you need to introduce these and at least go through them. They do not need to master these as well as they have A through Z, but having a grasp on these will be really helpful. You're gonna, in the WISE Guide, go over them even more. So really a mastery is not important, but just a basic introduction and a start on them would be beneficial for your kid. So the next thing you're going to do for step 5 is you're going to start figuring out how to use the WISE guide. So at this point, you've already taken the pre-assessment, you've already determined where they are in the WISE guide, you've mastered the A through Z phonograms, or at least got a good grasp on them. You've introduced the multi-letter phonograms. Now you're ready to start. So in Spell to Write and Read, turn to page 69, and this is talking about how to begin the daily spelling in the WISE list. So you want to read through this without your child on your own time. It's a lot to take in, but it's really beneficial to understand how to introduce new words from the WISE guide from the spelling list. So we're going to start with an example. So the word they have is top, which is in section A of the WISE guide. So we're going to turn to that. So there's the word top. So the first thing you're going to do is your child is not going to see these words. You're just going to give them an auditory example, and then you're going to break it down with even some fingers and start from there. So the word is top. So what they're going to do is you're going to open up the primary log and show them first off where they're going to write the word top. So you're going to say you're going to write the word top between these two lines on the dotted line with lowercase. You're just going to be really explicit in explaining how you want them to write the word top. So this is where you're writing the word top. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to use it in a sentence. So you're going to say a sentence from here or your own sentence. It's up to you. Start from the top and count the words. So that's it in a sentence. So after that together, you're going to say the word top. So say it with me, top. Then the teacher is going to think to spell the word T-O-P. So you're going to out loud say the different segments of the sound t, p. So they want to hear the breakdown of those different phonogram sounds. So t, p. Then you're going to have your child do it with you. So go t, p. And this time you're going to do it with your fingers. So t, p. There's 3 fingers represented in this because there are 3 letters that make up the word t, p, top. But you're not going to say that to your child. You're going to start familiarizing them with the finger use. And so if you have a 4-letter word, you're going to use 4 fingers. Even if there's a blend where it's 2 letters to represent 1 sound, you're still going to use 4 fingers because it's going to start to show them how many letters and start to figure out how to break down that word. So t, p, 3 letters. And then after that, what you're going to do is you're going to point to the log and you're going to say, write the word top and say it aloud as you go in that breakdown. So they're going to go t, p, top. After that, you're going to take out a piece of paper of your own and you're going to do the same thing. T, p. Make sure yours is right for sure. Then you're going to say, does yours look like mine? If it does, great. If theirs doesn't, you could always have them just erase it and try make it look like yours. Top, okay? And then after that, you can say, are there any markings? So by markings, if there are markings, this page shows you the words. The page next to it will show you any markings. And the markings are explained here with rules, but after you get a good grasp of these phonograms, you should figure out, it should be pretty clear on what's the first sound an A can make. And so this S is, it makes a Z sound, so there's a 2 above it because it's the second sound S can make. So the first sound is S, the second sound is Z. So is makes that Z sound, so they put a 2 above it to represent the second sound an S can make. So are there any markings on the word top? There are not. So the student would say, nope, there are not. So you do not put any markings on here. If there were, there was a need, you'd write it right on there. You'd write a 2 above it to mark it. After that, you together say the word top broken down again with a t, and then you move on to the next word. So if there is a word that is a little different, again, read through here to understand how to explain it, because not every word is as simple as top. After that, you're going to move on to step 6, which starts on page 90. So for the first day, you're doing that preliminary and introducing 10 to 40 words, up to you. And then after that, you're going to have multiple days to practice those words before you move on to a new list. So on page 90 in Spell to Write and Read, they give you some options for what you can do on those other days. And again, in this WISE guide at the bottom, They have some enrichment, spelling enrichments that are pretty fun, but sometimes they take multiple steps and it could be a lot for you to take on. So those are option ones, but between the enrichments and page 90, you can figure out what you want to do with your child on other days of the week when you're with them at home. And that is a wrap. So that is an introduction on how to use this if your child is at a point where they're at a reading level. I hope that helped. If your child is not at a point where they're at a reading level, we're going to turn to Spell to Write and Read. Again, after that assessment on page 197, it tells you what to do if your child is a beginning non-reader. So the first thing you're gonna do is, again, you're gonna go over those phonograms, the A through Z, and that's gonna take a long time because your child is just learning those letters and how to write them and how to what the sounds make. That will take a long time. And then after that, you can introduce the multi-letter just as introductory. And then it says you can go through the first 140 spelling words. So after they have a really good grasp on this, and I mean a really good grasp because they are brand new, so this is going to be a lot of new information for them, then you can go ahead and start on section A before you give the pre-assessment at all. You're going to start in section A, and you can slowly introduce the spelling words, and this is going to have to go very slow because they are very new to this and you do not want to create spelling frustration. But yeah, so you can start introducing the first 140 words, which goes all the way to almost right in between there, huh? 140, which goes all the way to page 18. 140 stopping with wing, and then after they've mastered that and the phonogram cards, then you could give them the assessment and decide if you want to start over with the spelling list or move them ahead after the word wing from number 140. So that's what you should do if your child is not at a reading level. Do not give them the pre-assessment. You definitely need to start with the phonogram A through Z cards. Possibly introduce the multi-letter phonograms, but that's up to you and your child's pace, and then you can start 1 through 40 in the WISE guide slowly at your child's pace, but really you're going to do a ton of practice if they're not reading with the A through Z phonograms.